And back at the Atlanta Motor Speedway for the final practice for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series teams. This is a 90-minute session. Sorry for any technical errors we may have just encountered, but Steve Burns, Larry McReynolds, Jeff Hammond, Bob Dillner, and Wendy Venturini, glad to be back with you.
We talked about some ill-handled driving cars in that first practice. I think it has moved right into this second practice for Carl Edwards in this 99 cars. He jumps right out there. He was 6th quickest in the first practice. Turns down into turn 3, gets those left side tires right. That was all about clipping the apron.
And a dip.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that a lot. Yeah, you try to hug that apron, but when you get right below that yellow line, it's a different angle of banking than the racetrack itself, and it will definitely do exactly what you just saw. And I think the reason you see Carl Edwards continue to run is he knows that's what did that to his race car.
And what happens there, Steve, when you get down that low and you hit that transition like that, what they call technically, it unloaded the car. It took that sway bar, which was kind of keeping the wedge in it. All of a sudden, it de-wedged the car, and it makes it get loose right there. So it's no fault of the race car when you do something to unhinge that mechanical advantage you're trying to build into it.
He's not bashful. He continues to dip that left front, especially below that yellow line. He just did it in 1 and 2, didn't upset the race car there.
He ain't scared. That's Carl Edwards we're talking about, and we are in Atlanta, and he loves this racetrack, and I think he understands what to expect when he does drive a car down there at a. Take a look at Bob Osborne, the crew chief on the number 99. And yes, that is a number 99 car. And Steve, you've been talking about this beautiful, unique paint job that Affleck and that group came up with for here in Atlanta.
Yeah, Jody Lawrence, 13-year-old girl, designed that. She has a type of cancer called blastoma. And 55 different kids at the Affleck Cancer Center submitted entries to color Carl's car.
And in the helmet he's wearing, it was specially designed by several of the Affleck Cancer Center patients. We mentioned he was 6th quickest in that first practice, ran a total of 28 laps. I think a lot of time during that 90 minutes was spent just trying to get him comfortable. We talked about it in that first practice. Carl broke his right foot, some bones in his right foot, doing some frisbee throwing and playing early part of the week, and so a lot of that practice was spent trying to just get the pedals comfortable for him.
Ryan Newman is 7th in points, 84 points ahead of 13th.
Right now he's jumped out there and he is the fastest in this practice session in this Army car.
We need to mention again, 7th through 14th, separated by just 89 points with 2 races remaining.
Talking about a lot of pressure and all the way down on this team right here with 39 car of Ryan Newman being led by Tony Gibson. You just can't afford to make a mistake here. I mean, that's the key thing right now. Now we're taking a look at Jimmy Johnson, our defending champion. Jimmy also ran a lot of laps in that first practice. He was the fastest car in that first session. But Larry, the thing is, and we talked about, you really expect the guys to kind of focus on qualifying. I think the cars were so ill in that first practice. I still think we're going to see a lot of guys tweak on those packages, try to come up with an ideal one, run maybe half of this practice session, and then go to a qualifying setup for the remainder of this practice session before we really get a chance to see who's going to be the quickest. I think we won't see that at least for another 45 minutes.
But Jeff, I think you made a great point in the latter part of that first practice. This is a 500-mile race tomorrow night. We saw a lot of guys run 40, 50 laps in that first practice. I know when you're getting ready for a 500-mile race, a lot of times what they like to see, the engine guys, is no more than about 100 to 125 miles total on the engine prior to the race. We have a unique schedule here. They call it the modified impound schedule. What that means, a 2-day show, 2 90-minute practice sessions. Will qualify about 4:30 local time. NASCAR won't impound the cars, but the cars will not see the racetrack again until the green flag tomorrow night.
How do you guys like this schedule? Is it too difficult on the crews? Do you think having an extra day perhaps back at the shop is a good thing? Do you like it?
I like it. I really do. And I think more, at first, there was not a lot of people very fond of it. But I think more and more people are warming up to it. I think it helps everybody. It helps the expense at the racetrack. Let's face it, every day you're at the racetrack, it's expensive for the racetrack to operate with security and ticket takers and everything else. We know it helps the race teams. These guys need more time at the shop. they need more time at home with their families. There are a lot of teams that did not fly down in here until early this morning, so realistically, they'll only be away from home one night.
Steve, I got mixed emotions on it, and I think the verdict is still out. I know it's a big undertaking for these teams. Some of these guys are excited about it. If your car is good, you like short days. If your car is bad, you want more practice.
Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup final practice from Atlanta is brought to you by Lumber Liquidators. Hardwood floors for less. We're 9 minutes into a 90-minute practice, the second and final. Go back to the garage and we start with Wendy.
Well, Jimmy Johnson's 10th on the chart in this second practice session. Only 7 laps for the 48 car. They brought it back in when Jimmy Johnson went out there the first time. He was calling for a roof spotter of another car around him on the racetrack. Apparently, there was a lot of traffic out there. And Chad Knaus's crew chief said, you'll get by him in no time. Just settle down out there. Well, they decided to bring him in. Chad Knaus says, we're not doing very well out there. And I don't think they were referring to the race car.
Sound like maybe talking about what we call communication. Gotta work on that a little bit.
Bob Dillner, what's going on with Casey Kane?
Well, Casey Kane is battling to stay in a spot for the chase, and right now he said his car is really, really good on the racetrack. But Casey and I talked during the break, and he said, you know, it's really like a razor's edge out there. If the crew does one thing to the car, it screws up the entire corner. And heck, I as a driver can do something and really screw up the corner as well. You drive out just a little bit deep, you maybe back the corner up a little bit. It is really troublesome for these crew chiefs and the drivers. They really have to pinpoint whether they made a mistake or the car's handling characteristics are just not right on this racetrack. So Casey Kane likes the racetrack, likes the car right now, but still trying to find just a little bit more.
And it's almost like everybody's on a razor's edge right now with the speed you're trying to run around this racetrack. The track does not have a lot of grip, even though it's overcast and cloudy. And see a lot of searching, a lot of scrambling going on in that garage area with the 46 cars that are here.
Casey Kane just 52 points ahead of 13th. He comes in here 11th.
Car right there had a big slide right there off of turn 2, headed down the back straightaway. The back end still doesn't look like it's really gripping probably the way he'd like for it to. Riding along here watching number 14 of Tony Stewart.
You know, you look at him right now with the points lead, 220 points over second place Jimmy Johnson. Of course, we know in a little under 2 weeks that points lead is going to go away. Tony right now today has 30 bonus points for his 3 wins. But he took the points lead 12 races ago after Dover. But here's the amazing thing. He has scored 551 more points this year at this point than he did 1 year ago. That's a lot of points.
And that's impressive considering the fact that he's in his first year as an owner driver.
Very impressive as far as that respect that there's concerned. And a minute ago you were looking at a graphic of the cars that have been in the top 12 all year long, including Tony Stewart. Saw Kurt Busch listed up there, Matt Kenseth, who is barely hanging on along with Jeff Gordon. So pretty remarkable season right there for that number 14 car, even if he doesn't wind up capturing the championship, because again, there's still a lot of racing to go. Those final 10, when we reset this thing, Steve, that's when we're going to find out who's really prepared and who's really can get up on the wheel. Because last year we had a great battle and you really had to be perfect, almost near picture perfect, when Jimmy Johnson won his 3rd consecutive championship. And a lot of the odds makers right now still believe that you're going to have to beat Jimmy Johnson, but a lot of folks are looking at Tony Stewart to be able to pull it off.
You know, you just saw Tony Stewart in the 14 go by our buddy Elliott Sadler in the 19. What's amazing, that's the 2 drivers right now that are tied for the most consecutive races without a DNF. Both Tony Stewart, Elliott Sadler, 47 consecutive races, about a little over a season, about 10 races past a season without having a DNF running at the end of each race.
Did he touch the wall?
If he didn't, he missed a big chance.
I'm telling you, it looked like he got awful close.
Right now, Elliott Sadler in this practice session, I was just trying to look, he's 15th quickest. He's run a total of 9 laps. Ryan Newman, the fastest, jumped right out there. A little bit on straight.
That's just what you call it, touching but not touching.
Not quite as much as Marcos Ambrose did near the end of the first practice.
I guess you call that a touch versus a hit.
And we can tell by probably the way his car is marked up, it's a little on the loose side. It got the right rear and didn't get the right front.
Exactly.
Jamie McMurray on the high side. We've talked about how this track lends itself to drivers running different lines.
Robbie Gordon right now the slowest of our 38 cars that's been out on the track, and we talked about it in the first practice session. Robbie doing double duty this weekend, but not double duty here at Atlanta. 2 different tracks, 2 different terrains, 2 different states, 2 different series, 2 races all in the same day tomorrow.
Where's he going? Wisconsin?
Crandon, Wisconsin, running the off-road championship series. He actually had the fastest qualifying time there yesterday, but the way their field is set, the top 6 in points are the top 6 in the front of the field, so Robbie will actually start that race 7th in the morning.
Get around this place with Kyle Busch, 27th quickest right now, and as Joe Gibbs Racing. Toyota with sponsorship from Pedigree this week.
Looks like he's maybe coming in. This has just been a track. It's been feast or famine for Kyle Busch.
He said it coming in here. We have work to do. We weren't that great here in the spring.
You know, when you look at that win at Bristol 2 weeks ago, at the 13 races between his win at Richmond in May and the win at Bristol, only 1 top 5 finish, and that was at the road course at Watkins Glen, and only 3 top 10 finishes for that 18 team, basically during the whole months of the summer.
Why? Why do you think it's like that?
It's just like they just got off of their base of where they were last year and beginning of this year. This was actually a couple of weeks ago with the OKG veteran Mark Martin in that 5 car. But Kyle Busch goes to victory lane for the first time in over 3 months.
And that run that night, I got to tip my hat. We know how great a car controller he's got, but that was a great battle between he and Mark Martin. I mean, they both respected one another, raced each other hard, and in the end, there was no cheap shots to get that win by either guy. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed watching the end of that race.
Well, you guys said it in the first practice as we watched Clint Boyer. Kyle Busch, they had been struggling, and I tell you what, in terms of clutch wins, that's about as big as there has been in a long time because they had to have that.
They needed it big time.
Both of them did. Both Mark and he both
exactly.
had to try to get that kind of like going in the right direction. And you might say stop the bleeding, and they both did it in great fashion. Take a look right there at the 33 car of Clint Boyer, 3rd quickest right now in this practice session, and clinging on with a glimmer of hope of making this chase. And Larry, I think you talked about it in the first practice. By the numbers, it's not over with, but he's got to have a huge race tomorrow night. I'm talking about, I think he's got to finish in the top 3 to give himself a legitimate shot to cut it into that deal. And he's going to need some help from some of the other guys that he's racing with to mathematically go into Richmond and at least have an opportunity of making the chase.
You know, there's Scott Speed. He's 4th quickest in this practice session. Had a great run at Bristol as well. Qualified 3rd, finished 15th. If he can just have 1 or 2 more good runs like that, he's only outside the top 35 by 115 points. Looks like he's working on qualifying. He's only run 3 laps so far.
Scott Speed 5th overall. Brian Vickers a 2nd. Tony Stewart is going to work on that points lead. Tonight on Speed, Ron Hornaday looks to regain his winning form at a track with a reputation for side-by-side excitement. Don't miss the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series live from Iowa tonight at 9:30 Eastern. NASCAR on Speed. Be there. Martin Truex Jr. 7th overall right now. Just got bumped to 8th. 17 laps of practice.
Yeah, I think who jumped up there was David Stremme in that 12 car. Just jumped up the 4th quickest. I think we'll continue to see as this practice unfolds a lot of jumping around at the top as these guys start making their practice qualifying run. Last practice session before qualifying and the race.
$20 minutes down. 90-minute session. Let's go back to the garage and Bob Dillner.
Right now, Matt Kenseth 10th quick, and you see Drew Blickensturfer, his crew chief, talking to Matt Kenseth. They have this car up on stands. And the big deal with Matt Kenseth is he's so much better this practice. At the end of the first practice, he said, this car is so loose, I can't even drive it. So Blickensturfer and this team changed just about everything in the interim between the practices. And now the only problem is that it's dragging in the middle of the corner. They've made some changes and got it to drag a lot less, but it seems like it's hitting the splitter and even hitting some bottom points of the car on the front end. So right now they're still trying to raise the front end of that car, but Matt Kenseth likes a lot better this practice than he did last practice, and that's good because he's battling to stay in the chase.
You know, I don't think we've documented well enough. This is the 6th year of the chase format, and there's only 2 drivers that has been there every single year the first 5 years, and we know one of them's going to be there a 6th, and that's Jimmy Johnson, the 48 car. The other driver, Bob just talked about him, Matt Kenseth in that 17 car.
And I talked with Drew Bleckenstofer this morning, and I asked him, I said, how'd you like your weekend off? He said, I didn't. He said, I want to get this thing over with and get moving on. He said, I don't like trying to overanalyze our situation and what we got going on here. I said, you ever been in a situation like this before? He said, well, I thought I had the one last year when they were racing for that nationwide championship. He said, but this is a total different animal. I got a lot more pressure. And he said, I'm not sleeping very good at night right now. And I can feel that young man's pain because he realizes, I think, what's at stake. They won Daytona. They won the second race. Defend a former champion. He's got a lot of pressure on him to perform the next 2 races. But this has been a good track for Matt. He's had good finishes here. He's always performed well.
You know, Michael Waltrip had a good point last year, right when the chase started. He said, you know, some teams, let's make the comparison. You got Jimmy Johnson locked in, Tony Stewart locked in, Jeff Gordon locked in. They know they're in, right? So that pressure is off. But then you got guys like a Brian Vickers, a Kyle Busch, a Matt Kenseth. They're using up so much energy just to get in the chase that could have a negative effect once it starts.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Darian Grubb and Tony Stewart, they've actually been able to breathe pretty easy for probably 4 or 5 weeks. They were locked in pretty much when they took the green flag at Michigan a few weeks ago, but they've pretty much known for several weeks, bar a disaster, that 14 car was going to be in the chase. They've been preparing, not saying that these guys aren't preparing for the chase, but like you say, Steve, they're using up a lot of energy just to try to get in it.
Now, I will say one thing about this 17 crew, and Larry, I think you'll agree with me. If they have one advantage is the fact that Matt has had to be in this situation before. He's won a championship. And the other thing is that consistent pit crew. If it comes down to making the right adjustments, getting a fast pit stop, these guys, they perform under pressure. I mean, they know what it's like to have to do, you know, that last stop for the money, or call it a money stop. They know how to deal with that. So the next couple races, if you had to give kind of like a tip of the hat to a crew, at least on pit road, Matt's got to feel good about that when they come down, that they won't get him in trouble. They won't be the ones that take him out and have given an opportunity to make this chase or stay in the chase.
Ryan Newman's the quickest in practice, and Wendy Venturini is there in that camp.
Ryan Newman and Tony Gibson started this practice session for the first 20 minutes in race trim. That was the goal. Ryan Newman went out there, ran 19 laps, fastest so far, as you just mentioned, Steve. The right rear tire was shaking a little bit for Ryan Newman. He felt like it was a little out of balance. They're going to check that. It was too loose in 1 and 2. He was getting way out there in 2. He wants to be a little snugger. 1 and 2 was his biggest complaint. They are switching over to qualifying trim.
And I'm going to tell you what, when you go to qualifying trim here, old car, new car, you know you better have that thing snugged up, because she's going to get loose when you go to qualify.
And another thing, we talked, hearing about the 17 car hitting the racetrack, if they go to qualifying trim, they better make darn sure it's off the racetrack. Otherwise, when it goes down here in turn 1, it's going to bottom out, and the driver's going to definitely have his hands full. So you're going to have to make sure you compensate for a lot of stuff when you make that transition. And we talked about people, you know, maybe running the first 25 or 30 minutes, making the switch over. 25 minutes in, teams are starting to make that transition. It'll take them about, what, 15, 20 minutes to move the weight around, do what that needs to be done. Then they'll go right into the one-lappers, see how fast they can run.
Mark Martin was second quick in first practice. He's debriefing with Alan Gustafson. We'll be right back. A.J. Allmendinger, 34th overall in his Dodge, sponsored by Hunt Brothers Pizza this weekend.
You think he delivers? I'm kind of hungry, so it's a little after lunch.
Honestly, I think watching his car the last practice and this practice, the furthest thing from his mind right now is delivering pizza. He's just trying to make back around to the start-finish line each time he goes. He has had his hands full.
It has been kind of challenging, or what would you say, interesting to watch?
First look at Regan Smith in the 78 car. He is 31st overall, just his 3rd lap of practice in this second session.
He kind of struggled in that first practice session as well. He was only 42nd quickest. And as we talked 2 weeks ago at Bristol, this team planning to be back a full schedule in 2010. They have the Hendrick engine package. They've run the full schedule the last 3 seasons up to this year. This has been about a 16 race schedule. But next year, I think a lot with the owner's company, the Denver Mattress. They're going to run the full schedule again in 2010.
Regan ran 24 laps in the first practice. And as Larry and Jeff have pointed out, guys like Mark Martin and Denny Hamlin ran between 40 and 55 laps. So Regan about half that number in the first 90-minute session.
We've got 46 cars here. Of course, all cars did practice that first practice session. The only 2 cars that's not been out there in this practice so far is David Gilliland, who's actually driving the 21 car this week. Bill Elliott with some cracked ribs from a dirt bike accident. And actually now we're sure that David Gilliland has been out there, and he's 13th quickest. Just went out there just a second ago. So now it looks like that the 36 car is the only car that has not been out there, Patrick Carpentier.
Jeff, you talk about the experience factor. We just saw Matt Kenseth and now Gilliland back down on the pit lane. But the one thing about Kenseth that concerns me, or if you're a Kenseth fan, is in recent weeks he said, you know what, we're not running as well as we need to. And that there's, as we watch Matt now, that would be the concern I would have if I'm a Matt Kenseth fan. Because let's face it, Matt doesn't mince words. And if he says we're not running the way we should be, I think that would be a concern.
But if you are a follower or even a fan of Matt Kenseth, you know that normally week in and week out, this 17 car has always been hovering around the top 10. And that's just what you call being competitive. And they do great things on pit road and put themselves in position to win. This year, we haven't seen that on a regular basis. Matt and his guys have struggled. They basically had to pull rabbits out of their hat to be able to try to get some wins. And I'm talking about after the first 2 races. It's like all of a sudden they won those first 2 races and they took a vacation, but they didn't. But I really believe that everybody is caught up with the Ford program, from a year ago. Roush Fenway was very, very strong last year. And this year, on a whole, take a look at Carl Edwards. I mean, he dominated the win column, along with Kyle Busch a year ago. And he hasn't gotten there this year. So if you really look at it, Matt's team has performed better than Carl's in a lot of places, especially the win column. So they've got a lot of work to do. Yeah.
They are worried about the next couple races, though, because like Steve said, he knows that they have not been running well. But I mentioned that the car was bottoming out, still bottoming out. So what they did actually, and Crucci, if you could talk about this, all this technology that we have, well, the guys actually took a little spray paint and shot it up underneath the splitter and up some of the chassis parts on the car just to see when they come in if that paint's not there anymore. It's an old trick. If it's not there, they're still bottoming out.
Well, the only thing you have to do, really, in my opinion, though, I don't think it'll change the car dramatically, is just put another shim in the pack, shim packers on both sides and raise the front end up a little bit. We used to do it with the springs all the time. We go into jack screws, put a round in both sides, raise the car up and get it off the racetrack. Now, when the car comes down and rests on the bump stops, all you got to do is just put another shim in there, raise it up till it stops hitting.
As rough and bumpy as this place is, before we had bump stops and coil binding and thing, you always put a couple rounds in the front end for qualifying because you knew your driver was going to go off in the corner much quicker, more downforce with the tape on the nose, going to travel more because you know it's going to bottom out as bumpy as, especially getting into turn 1.
Well, Wendy, what's going on with Greg Biffle in the 16 cam?
Well, what he said on the radio, the car, something is messed up, according to Greg Biffle on the car. It was driving crazy, so they brought it in and they made a left rear spring change. They put the left rear spring back in it how they had it. They changed the left front bump stop. They put the track bar back the way it was. Everything has been changed on this car, and now he's pulling out to make another run. Whatever package they tried, Greg Biffle did not like.
And that's what I'm hearing and seeing. Their teams are not just changing one thing on their race car. They're changing 3 or 4 things at a time.
It's driving crazy like Hammond.
Always.
Stay with us here in Atlanta. Juan Pablo Montoya, 5th overall in this practice.
He was 9th quickest in that earlier practice. Been one of those racetracks that I think just one latched on to from the very beginning. Got his very first top 5 finish here in his rookie season in the spring race that year. He's just not had a lot of luck here since then.
Yeah, but he's got his favorite car here. It's the one he looked so awesome at Indy. And he had a pretty good run here in the spring. I mean, he was pretty competitive and finished well. So I think Brian Patty and he coming here with great expectations.
You know, I don't think we've ever seen or heard of a team show, exemplify, and even document how they have committed to do everything to make the chase. And I think we've seen it with calls that Brian Patty's made. I think we've seen it with Juan Pablo Montoya on the racetrack, not taking chances and take a good finish and turn it into a bad finish.
And to take that a step further, I think it'll be fun to watch if in fact they do nail a spot in the chase, because when they take the wraps off that horse, whoo, he's going to run.
Oh, you got to believe that. And again, everything you pointed out, Larry, it's just good, smart racing. As we take a look at another guy that's been racing smart and looking really strong, who's currently 2nd in this practice, Brian Vickers. Again, a great racetrack for him. I mean, this team's got to be licking his chops coming to Atlanta, feeling like they got a great opportunity to score some valuable points here and possibly go back to victory lane for the 2nd time this year.
Vickers just 39 points out of that 12th spot.
You know, I love everything going on with the 2009 season. You go back 2 years ago, when we first started racing this car on a part-time basis, it was pretty obvious, not too deep into the season, it was going to be between the 48 and the 24 car in the chase and to win the championship. You go back last year, I think it was pretty obvious at this point, 18, 48, or 99. But honestly, guys, when I look right now, from Tony Stewart, who has a heck of a points lead, all the way back to Brian Vickers, who's 14th, I don't see a clear-cut favorite. There's just no dominant factor there right now. We've had a lot of different winners. Every major organization that's a multi-car operation has won a race this year, with the exception of Richard Childress Racing and Earnhardt Ganassi Racing. I love what's going on right now. We've got 2 races to go before the chase, and then, of course, the 10 chase races.
How about first-time winners like Brad Keselowski at Talladega, David Rudiman at the Coca-Cola 600 at Lowe's Motor Speedway? It's been interesting to say the least.
See, this man right here went on a road course. Casey Kane winning at Infineon back in June.
Had a lot of surprises. And I think you're right, Larry. We get into the chase this year, it's going to be a matter of who is going to get hot. I mean, who's going to rip off? When I'm not talking about, you know, like Carl did last year, win 4 out of the 10 races. I think a guy's going to be able to go out there and maybe win maybe 2 or 3 races and be in pretty good shape for this chase if he can be consistent.
Yeah, Carl Edwards won 4 of the 10, 8 top 3 finishes,
and didn't
win the championship.
Ryan Newman has 19 laps. He is the quickest, followed by Brian Vickers, Clint Boyer, David Stremme, Juan Pablo Montoya.
And Casey Kane has run a total of 23 laps in this 9 car. He was 12th quickest in the earlier practice, ran a lot of laps in that first practice, 42 laps total. He's doing double duty here this weekend. We actually have 16 drivers attempting to race the Nationwide Series race tonight and the Sprint Cup Series race. Casey making kind of a rare appearance in the Nationwide Series. He'll be driving the number 10 car for Braun. Actually, it's Richard Petty Motorsports, but it's out of the Braun stables.
They qualify. We'll have coverage for you at 4:30. And actually, following this final practice, we'll also have coverage of Nationwide Series qualifying.
That's from the fastest in the first practice session right there. You see Jimmy Johnson leading the pack. And this is now so far into this second practice. But I think Jeff made a great point. When we talk about our different players in the chase, even if you include Clint Boyer and David Rudiman, when I look at the top 15, 14 of those guys are in the top 15 from the first practice session, including David Rudiman and Clint Boyer.
Well, Bob Dillner, A.J. Allmendinger was wicked loose a little while ago. What's going on there?
He's been wicked loose every time he's been on the racetrack. In fact, I just talked to A.J. and he said, we are absolutely horrible. This team is lost right now. He said, I'm busting my butt every time I'm on the racetrack. Check that out. Woo. You can't drive a car. That looks like coming off in the 4th turn in Eldora. So right now, scratching their heads and they're going to work on this race car.
You know, Jeff, I want to tee this up to you because I've been thinking about this. As we mentioned, this is our second full year with this new car. We ran it part-time in 2007. And even the racetracks that we have went to for so many years where you fought push, 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 not turning, it's almost like they've got the front tires working, as we see Patrick Carpentier in this 36 car. He's the slowest of the 46 cars with a little Atlanta stripe. But it's almost like everybody's got the front of these cars down and turning. And now everywhere we go, week in and week out, qualifying a race trim, they're fighting loose.
Yeah, and I think it's really has a lot to do when you lose that mechanical grip that's in these cars, and the car starts to yaw out too much. All of a sudden, once it slips that bond, it's hard to catch back. And I think a lot of the guys have really been fighting that. You know, they've been, I think, lobbying the NASCAR to do something about the Aero package and try to get the car a little more stable. You know, when it does, we've been bragging about the flatter sides, which helps sometimes, but again, they put so much dependency on the Goodyear tires and hooking them up, then when they finally do brake traction, all of a sudden the car itself aerodynamically doesn't help the car out. I mean, it didn't help itself out. Again, you saw the 36 car, Patrick Carpentier, and a lot like the cars we've seen several different times. We saw A.J. Allmendinger. A lot of cars have got stripes on them down here this weekend because they can't quite find the grip when they need it.
Brian Newman still the quickest, about halfway through this final practice at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Tomorrow, NASCAR race day storms into Atlanta where time is running out for chase contenders. Wendy Venturini will get the real deal with Juan Pablo Montoya, and Carl Edwards and Kurt Busch join the show live. NASCAR race day built by the Home Depot live at 5 Eastern. NASCAR on speed. Be there on a Labor Day weekend. Kurt Busch won here March 9th.
He's only run a total of 6 laps in this practice session. Right now, he is 18th quickest, the same car. Nicknamed it Hot Rod after he won the race. Same car he won the race with back in March. You know, they almost decided to bring a new race car here because Kurt's one of those teams we talked about. You know, pretty good shape, 192 points to the good over 13th. They almost brought a brand new race car here, but at the last minute they decided, you know what, let's just take a proven product. And of course, Kurt was also part of the 4 teams that did a Goodyear tire test back in July here.
And Larry, you've been talking about it all day and talking to Pat Trice. I think one of the reasons for that was they couldn't 100% put their finger and say, this car is better than what we got in the shop. You know, it was like, okay, it was like almost like a guess. While we know what this car could do, we've documented the fact 230 some laps here. He just annihilated the competition here in the spring, and I know this is a different race, but when you've got that kind of proven product, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
And I think the only reason they were considering bringing a new car here is to get a 500-mile test on another new car to have more bullets in the arsenal for the chase.
But I think when you talked about the schedule and the way testing was set up here, I think that had some influence also, that they couldn't do it like you normally do. A normal routine would have allowed them to bring a new car, sort through some stuff, you know, Steve, and have time to kind of analyze it in between a Friday and a Saturday practice.
Well, my other question about that is, that race was so early in the season, about 4th or 5th of the year. Like I said, March 9th. Here we are now, it's September. And, you know, the car had, I hear it every week, it continues to evolve. The drivers get a little more comfortable, the teams get a little smarter in working on it. So it is a moving target.
And I think we continue to hear, and it's even so this weekend, teams continue to build brand new race cars. Well, what makes it better? Well, maybe it's a little lighter. Maybe they've got more lead in it. Maybe the CG is a little lighter. I think this is even though this car, it's hard to do a lot of things, it has a very small box of things you can work on, but there's still things you can do to make the next car you build better.
Casey Mears, the Jack Daniels Chevrolet, is 11th right now in this practice. Casey working on his 23rd lap of practice. This 1.54-mile speedway.
Talked to Todd Berry, the crew chief in this 07 cars. He gets down, he hits that apron a little bit, and tail kicks out on him. But, you know, quietly, over the last 3 races, they've had all top 15 finishes. So, not the top 10s that they're looking for, but those good, solid top 15 finishes. I think this is one of those teams, trying to make things better and build for 2010.
Casey Mears 20th in points.
Here's another brand new race car, and what they did, Todd Berry and that group, they tried to build one similar to the car that they had pretty good runs with at Indy and Michigan last month. They built this car, tried to simulate that car, but maybe make it a little bit better. Probably holds a little more lead than that race car.
I want to go back there to your point a minute ago. I want both you guys to weigh in, because what we know, what we see every week is, and we hear teams talking about it, NASCAR's got us in such a tight box. We know, with all the templates, there's not a lot of creativity in terms of where you hang those bodies. But what are the things you can do when you build a new car? You talked about lead placement, but what other areas can you look at? Is there anything to look at, Jeff?
It's that you look where NASCAR allows you to manipulate a little bit. And you can't get too creative as far as the body's concerned, but there are subtle changes, and I think that's what they're learning about this car. Is when the attitude is at a certain position on the racetrack, that is so important that you maximize that and maintain it. And that's what the teams do in the wind tunnel, Steve, is when they get a car that's new like that, they get it down at the right kind of attitude, they look at it, they scrutinize it. They may change, something as subtle as a 16th of an inch in an area you can work in can influence how the airflow back to the rear wing or down the right side or left side of the car can make the car a little more stable. Those are the kind of things, and the little things, the very minute things. You may not change something but 1.5 pounds or 2 pounds that can make a difference in the long run. Because let's face it, guys, competition today is so close. I was talking to one of the drivers this morning, and we were referring to the fact that, you can be 0.2 of a second off and be 30. And those 2 pounds, 1 pound, it's like Larry's saying about the weight. If you can get the Bondo out of the car, build the car lighter, get some weight down low, all of a sudden, now you're either a 10th better than the competition maybe. You might, that 0.2, you done picked up half of it, and all of a sudden you're more competitive. Or you were at the front of the pack, now you can lead more laps. Just the little things that make the big differences today.
Hey, Wendy standing by with Ryan Newman.
And a long race run for Ryan Newman at the beginning of that practice session. They're switching the car over to the qualifying trim now. What did it feel like in race run? Looks pretty good out there.
It felt pretty good. The U.S. Army Chevrolet's been good off the truck, so Tony Gibson and the guys have done their part. We're switching over to qualifying trim now and see if we can go out and bust off a lap. But I'm kind of disappointed it's not going to be night qualifying.
Talk about qualifying and talk about that race run. What about this racetrack and the lines that you've been running today? How have they differed from earlier in the year?
My car feels pretty good everywhere. I run about the same lap time, so that's a good thing as long as you're fast enough. So we'll see what it's like tomorrow. We're done with race trim for now.
All right. 6 consecutive poles for Ryan Newman. He's going to get back in this race car now. Tony Gibson and the 39 guys have it switched over to the qualifying trim.
I didn't think about that. This is the first time that we've actually had the race scheduled to start at night, but it's the first time in a long time we won't be qualifying at night.
You're right about that.
Stay with us here on Speed. Coverage of NASCAR Sprint Cup Final Practice from Atlanta is brought to you by Camping World's Destination Recreation Sweepstakes. Log on to campingworld.com/racing to enter for weekly giveaways. This week, win one of 5 Adventurer folding bikes.
Larry, you been riding that bike?
I don't do bikes.
I thought I seen you on a bike.
Nope, don't ride bikes. Scooters, but no bikes. Too much work to ride a bike.
Okay.
Tony Stewart was 4th fastest in first practice, but right now he's got 35 laps on, just 37th overall.
I think he's just strictly working on race setups and trying to get that car to where it feels comfortable under him. Again, you keep watching these cars, and we watch them from up here in several different angles. There's not really a good-looking race car out there. All these guys have got their hands full.
We had some raindrops in the first practice, but now the cloud cover is mostly gone.
Ooh. She wiggle wobbling up off that corner. So I think that's all I want.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Final of 2 90-minute practices underway here at Atlanta Motor Speedway. 53 minutes into this session. They qualify later on. Of course, we'll have that for you here on Speed. And up next after this practice is Nationwide Series qualifying.
You know, guys, one thing that we've been looking at here, and I think the speeds are going to get quicker once these guys really get serious about qualifying. You heard Ryan Newman, who's already fastest at a 30.82. They're going to qualifying trim. Let's go back to the spring race now. We know the tire is a little bit different, but this tire, construction-wise, should have a little more grip, which makes you run quicker through the corners. But Mark Martin sat on the pole in the spring at a 29.64, and his miles per hour was a little over 187 miles per hour. And right now, Ryan Newman is fastest at a 30.82. That's a second slower than Mark Martin's pole speed. But I think this documents what we've been saying throughout all of these practice sessions, how much this track changes with temperature. The qualifying session, we talked about all the qualifying sessions in the past few years, they've been at night. That was at night when Mark Martin sat on the pole at a 29.64. So I don't think we'll see pole speeds even close to that, because we're going to be qualifying at 4:30 in the afternoon. I think it's going to be quicker than it is, but I don't think it'll get close to that.
Well, we have a little video compilation, a montage, if you will, of some ill-handling race cars. Greg Biffle said his car was driving crazy.
It's pretty loose. Got some pretty fast speeds.
A.J. Allmendinger, wicked loose.
Ooh, hang on to her, A.J.
Evil, maybe.
It
And
even
then
gets bigger.
A category all to his own. Sam Harnish just a moment ago.
I can't believe it didn't hit nothing.
And Bob, he came straight to the garage area after that one.
Yes, he did, and he's been very quiet on the radio. But Travis Geisler actually got right on and said, guys, did we make the right adjustment there? And everybody kind of just was very silent. He says, okay, let's take some cross out of the car. So if you listen to that adjustment, you would think maybe it's a little tight to loose. It's a little snug in the center, and then it just gets wicked loose because he's got so much wheel in the car. But Travis Geisler was wondering if they had actually made the right adjustment for how the car was handling just before that.
Bob, I can tell you right now, it wasn't just a little bit loose. It was snappy loose. I mean, that thing jumped.
But we do see that a lot with this car is, you know, we may see the tail end of something where the car's about to spin out sideways, but a lot of the problems started where they had so much wheel in it trying to get it to turn, and then finally those front wheels bite, and the rear just can't keep up with it.
Mark Martin was second quick in first practice. Right now, 19th overall. Just run a handful of laps. But stay with us here on Speed. A lot more headed your way. Just as we went to break, Mark Martin ran a qualifying lap, and he went from 19th to 2nd. So teams now putting their qualifying setups under those race cars. Carl Edwards, meanwhile,
Hey, it's hop along.
yeah, having a broken foot. He's struggling with that. Still pretty quick in his race car. Edwards 8th overall in this practice. Jeff Gordon, a four-time winner here at the Atlanta Motor Speedway, 14th overall. He's working lap number 17. So a couple of Chevrolets atop the timing and scoring charts, led by Ryan Newman and Mark Martin. And it's Brian Vickers, Clint Boyer, David Stremme is the quickest Dodge, and Juan Pablo Montoya.
Now, as we definitely have the sun out about as bright as we've had it, and we know that's heating the track up, it's taking grip away. I'll be anxious to see how some of these practice qualifying runs even relate back to our first practice session. Jimmy Johnson's fast time was a 30.32, and that was right at the beginning of that practice. It was very overcast, and then, as we've already said, Ryan Newman right now is the fastest in this practice at a 30.82.
But Larry, more sun means less grip. How can they even stand it?
They're going to depend, what is it Darrell says, they're going to really depend on those four feel-goods, Mr.
Yeah.
Goodyear.
Bob Dillner.
Well, Dale Earnhardt Jr. has been on those four feel-goods this entire practice session. He's been in mock qualifying runs this entire session because he was so good in that first practice. In fact, he was driving the junior line all the way up against the wall, got the rubber worked in there very well, and he liked his race car, so they switched to a mock qualifying run here, and he's made 3 of them right now. He's pretty good, just a little bit tight, but he is in the top 10. So Dale Earnhardt Jr. runs pretty well here usually at Atlanta, and he's got his car cooking here today.
His time was a 30.97.
See if these 4 field goods can get him around the racetrack a little better than the last time out.
Sam has 3 previous starts here in his 77 car, 2 last year and in the spring race of this year. Right now his fast time is a 31.35. He just ran a 32.23 on that lap there. I'm not sure this, I don't think this group is I don't know if they're really ready for a practice qualifying run just yet.
Curious, guys, just 3 or 4 cars on the racetrack right now. We saw Carl Edwards heading inside of his transporter. Do you think the bulk of the work is done?
No. I think a lot of them are changing over to qualifying trim right now with exactly 30 minutes to go in this practice session. And that's the neat thing, especially for those go-or-go-homers, about the modified impound schedule. When you look at a true impound like we have at both Talladega races in Daytona in July, you pretty much have to qualify with your race setup or vice versa. The good news at this type of a schedule, even though you don't get back on the racetrack, after qualifying today, you get your car back and you can put back in there what you think you want to race.
Wendy Venturini.
Well, you guys were talking about the rear grip. That's what everybody's talking about on the radio right now. Ryan Newman had to move his car around to get some more grip. Same thing with Kurt Busch, who sits in the garage area right now, 22nd, and he's run 19 laps. He said he's had to move around and bounce around a lot. He said he does not feel any rear grip from the center out. He also said this car is going through a mood swing. Wonder what that means.
I don't think it's his car. I think it's this racetrack going through a mood swing.
Temperamental.
Seeming they're looking at some of the notes that the team have written down, whether it's the tire guy, showing him the tire temperatures, pressures, maybe the changes that went along with that, trying to figure out what's going on.
Kurt's got a little fan going there, trying to cool down.
It's humid out there. Very humid.
Evil.
Next week, Big Block Thursday has what you need. The intense grassroots drag racing of Pinks All Out, the adrenaline-fueled chases of Jack, and the jaw-dropping danger of the wreck season finale. Don't miss Big Block Thursday night, beginning at 8 p.m. Eastern, only on Speed.
That's impressive. Nice read, Larry Mack.
Way to go.
You and Hammond. Outstanding.
We have a great teacher in Steve
right.
Burns.
Trying to keep up with you, brother.
I have another theory.
Yes.
We've been talking about these speeds. Just remember, no matter sunshine or moonlight, we've always been here in March and late October. Very cool temperatures. Even in the practice during the day, we are here on Labor Day weekend. Even when it's overcast, it's still hot and it's still humid. I think that contributes to another reason the speeds are down.
Dun, dun, dun. I like that, Mr. Reynolds. That's the way to do it, brother. Paying attention to that weather based off of the season.
So we'll wait on DW's next text message.
He's keeping us honest.
Marcus Ambrose up to 30th from 41st. We go back to Bob.
Steve, when we talk about teams switching over to the mock qualifying runs or the qualifying trim, there are certain things that we always see here in the garage area. First of all, we see the car go up on scales. We see tape go on the nose. But there are some other things as well. Teams always fill the car with fuel. And what they'll do is when their qualifying run is done, they'll actually take this can, they'll fill it back up, put it on the scale, and they'll see how much fuel they used in those runs. And of course, like you guys talk about all the time, the 4 Dr. Feelgoods. They have stickers on the tires, brand new tires. Brian Vickers' teams plans to make 3 mock qualifying runs in the waning minutes of practice. So when we say they're going over to mock qualifying sessions, this is what we're talking about. New tires, the fuel, the tape on the front, and of course, the car goes up on these scale pads to see where the cross and so forth is. I want to know from the crew chiefs, anything else I'm missing?
Maybe change even the fluid sometimes more in the transmissions, get a lot of stuff to kind of pull back in. And some drivers will even ask for you to work on the brakes a little bit, make sure the car's rolling before you don't use a lot of brake here. So everything as far as rolling resistance you may work on. And Steve, you and I've done enough qualifying stuff at Talladega. We're still going to put a good coat of wax on it.
Just buff it out.
Buff it out.
Get the dust off of it.
Harry Hyde even used to put baby powder all over it at a Daytona and Talladega qualifying run.
I always thought it was because his driver stunk.
Here's Paul Menard in that 98 car. Right now, Paul is 21st quickest. He's run a total of 13 laps.
Got about 20 minutes left in this session.
You know, we haven't really gotten into it, guys. We talk about we're going to start qualifying here for the Sprint Cup race this weekend here at Atlanta at 4:30 this afternoon. How about the luck of the draw? I mean, we do have qualifying. We know that the guys at the go homers will go out dead last. But when you start looking at who may have gotten a good draw as far as guys who've been quick in practice, you've got to look at Jeff Gordon, who's going to be going out 29th. Brian Vickers will be 25th. While on the other hand, John Andretti will lead this thing off, followed by Jimmy Johnson, and then the 43 car of local boy Reed Sorensen and Kevin Harvick. So going out early is not really going to be, I think, a good thing.
Yeah, it was not a good day for Richard Childress Racing drawing because 3 of his 4 cars will go out 4th, 5th, and 6th. The good news for Clint Boyer, he's the last of the top 35 to go out.
Stay with us here at the Atlanta Motor Speedway on a Labor Day weekend. You're on board with Kurt Busch. He won here back in early March. And folks, they are hauling the mail on this high-speed Atlanta Motor Speedway.
Kurt has run a total of 28 laps. Just kind of looking, we're not seeing some of the lap totals that we saw in the first practice session. Let's see, Brian Vickers has run 37 laps. Carl Edwards run 34 laps so far in this practice session. That seems to be the top lap getters.
4 different winners. The last 4 races here in Atlanta.
And just remember the March race of 2008 that Kyle Busch won. That was the first time with the new car here. And also remember that was Toyota's very first win in the Sprint Cup Series.
As we said earlier, Kurt Busch was, I guess it's fair to say, dominant here back in March. Led 234 of 325 laps.
They talked about in their press releases this week. Right now, they're 192 points to the good. He said, all we want to look at after the race, are we 162 points or better in front of the 13th place guy? And that will lock them into the chase. Kurt, of course, was the first guy to win the championship under the chase format back in 2004. You know, Ryan Newman, his fast lap early in this practice right out of the box was a 30.82. Made a practice qualifying run, a little hotter racetrack, Jeff, slowed down 0.2 to 31.01. I think that just goes to show you how sensitive this track is to track temperature.
But I was talking to Wendy Venturini during the break. He's been kind of keeping up with what's been going on down there with the 12th with Ryan Newman's car. And she said that Ryan wasn't really happy with his effort. He kind of missed his marks on a couple of points around the racetrack. And it might be because of the sunshine making the car change it a little bit where he needs to drive it differently. But he was kind of frustrated with himself more so than the car.
Juan Pablo Montoya, the 42 car. He's only run a total of 5 laps in this practice session. Right now, he is 6th quickest. His fast lap is a 30.94. He just ran a 31.53.
Juan Pablo has a 64-point cushion over 13th place Kyle Busch. 9th in points.
Joe Nemechek was the fastest of the go homers in that first practice session, and right now he is 17th quickest, 3rd quickest of the go homers. Scott Speed is quickest. David Gilliland in the 21 car is 2nd quickest of the go home guys.
And back to Bob.
Hey, Steve, here's something interesting to note. You heard from Wendy Venturini just a little while ago about how the sun is out and it's getting really warm down here. Well, that relates to track temperature. When we started this session, the track temp was 98 degrees, and now it's 125 degrees. So the track temperature really rising, and crew chiefs, we know that could play havoc with getting a good read on your race car.
Well, it makes it very hard to A-B stuff, you know, because as it's heating up, it's obviously losing grip along the way.
Jeff Burton in the 31 car. 18th in points for Jeff. Doesn't have a opportunity to get in the chase.
You go back to what Larry was talking about, trying to ABA things and where we are. Here's Ryan Newman. He's back out here about his third trip here in his practice session. And we know this is another qualifying attempt, Steve. So we'll be interested to see, combined with what Wendy told us about him missing his marks, whatever adjustments Tony Gibson did, get an opportunity right now. See exactly what this track has to give, because we know that Ryan is really good around here. I mean, his record here is exceptional. His time has always been good. So we'll find out whether or not this racetrack, how much exactly has slowed down, or whether or not it really doesn't bother him at all and how fast he can run.
Again, the last time out, he ran a 31:01 with that 39 car. Let's see what he runs this time here as he completes the lap. 31:16 slowed down. Now, this is the 96 car. Of course, Bobby Labonte has been in this car all year long, but it was told to me this morning, just remember, when this all started, they only had sponsorship sold for this car for about 28 or 29 races. The sponsor that's on the car, they had a request. They wanted to put 26-year-old Eric Darnell, who is a Roush Fenway driver, limited schedule in the Nationwide Series. Bobby Labonte, he's not out of this car. He'll actually be back in it next week at Richmond. But as we speak, Bobby Labonte's here this weekend driving the 71 car for TRG Motorsports, and that keeps Bobby's 568 consecutive starts intact.
And David Gilliland, who was in the 71, is in the 21.
We'll fill you in on the rest when we come back.
What a tangled web. We had some rain sprinkles in the first practice, but now sunny blue skies. Heard Bob Dillner talk about the track heating up. And we're closing in on the final minutes of this second 90-minute practice for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series teams. Following this, we'll have NASCAR Nationwide Series qualifying, followed by Sprint Cup qualifying, all here on Speed on a Labor Day weekend.
Speaking of qualifying, the 5-car Mark Martin looks like he's getting ready to make a run, and he was second quickest right now in this practice session. But guys, this man's won 4 races this year, and everybody looks and says, how in the world can Mark Martin be in jeopardy and not making the chase with 4 wins? And they say the same thing about Kyle Busch. But when you look at one record, I think that's very important, we don't need to overlook, is how consistent this team has been and some of the issues they've had. Can you believe they've had 7 finishes of 30th or worse? As a matter of fact, he's had 2 of them, you know, over 40. One of them, 2 40ths and 1 43rd finish.
3 of them were in the first 4 races of the year.
It got him way behind. The same thing for Kyle. So, we talk a lot about how successful, how competitive a team can be, but you've also got to eliminate mistakes. Now, they had 2 engine problems, and that's not no fault of Mark or his crew chief, and like it just happens sometimes. But when you're the victim of something like that, it puts you behind the 8 ball. And right now, with 2 races to go, that's one number that I guess we got to start paying attention to. Also, is not how well you finish, it's making sure that where you do finish it, if it's around 43rd or 30th or something like that, your year is done. You cannot have any more mistakes, especially when you've had 7 of them so far this year.
Now, he picked up about a half a tenth on that run right there, from a 30.88 to a 30.83, but that kept him second quickest behind Ryan Newman, who ran a 30.82. But if you compare apples to apples, that's faster than Ryan Newman, because Ryan Newman in these same conditions just ran about a 31.16. So that was actually a pretty good lap right there for Mark Martin.
Bob, what's going on with Juan Pablo Montoya?
Well, actually, Juan Pablo Montoya is a little under the weather. He's been fighting a cold like a bunch of us, like I am here today at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. But he's going to go out for one more run. And I just spoke to Brian Patty, his crew chief. He said, you know what, we're waiting as late as possible to make one more qualifying type run. But this sun and this weather and this track temperature is really screwing things up, because we want to get it as close to the time that we'll qualify as possible. The later in the session, the better. But this sun is messing some things up for some teams in this garage area.
It will definitely throw you a curveball, that's for sure. getting down to just about 10 minutes to go in this practice session. So a lot of these guys making a practice qualifying run here, probably be the last time we'll see them on the racetrack.
Stay with us for the final moments of Sprint Cup Series practice here at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. America's fastest game show is Pastime, and every Wednesday night you can play along. Just name the time and see if you're better than the contestants or the house. Catch all new back-to-back episodes of Pastime Wednesday nights beginning at 9 Eastern, presented in Speed HD.
HD?
High definition.
Comes Ryan Newman, the Army car, the 39 car, what will probably be his last run of this practice session. His last time out was 31:16. He's run a total of 23 laps so far in this practice. Looks like Matt Kenseth, the most laps in this practice at 46.
Look at the line. If you don't think everybody wants to have a clear racetrack to make sure that they don't have any problems either getting going or, you know, messing up their qualifying attempt, all these guys are patiently waiting to make that one last run. Carl Edwards, there's a 39 of Ryan Newman.
Just saw Jamie McMurray, the 26 car, pull out on the racetrack. Here's his teammate David Reagan in the 6 car right now. David's 34th quickest. David kind of considers this a home track for him, and he has his hands full with this UPS car.
It was a great promotion. Now you can see UPS all the way down the right side.
Yes, you could.
Which is not a good thing. It's a good thing for UPS, but it's not a good thing for David Reagan.
Or the crew chief on top of the truck.
Guys, here in the garage area, it's funny how everything goes in shifts. It's monkey see, monkey do for a while when everybody switches over from race trim to qualifying trim. The garage is packed, everybody's switching their cars over to QT. But now the whole garage area has emptied out and everybody was pulling out at the same exact time, trying to get a good qualifying run in the last few minutes of this practice session. It was so bad they had a logjam of traffic. It was actually pretty comical, but now everybody's out there, but they all have the same goal. They want a clean racetrack. You guys have a better view of what's going on out there. I'm sure it's getting crowded.
It reminds me right now as we take a look at Richard Childers talking with Clint Boyer on top of their transporter. Reminds me a little bit of Talladega, the way that line's kind of forming out there.
And I think it's for a totally different reason. At Daytona and Talladega, you don't want a car that you can see because we know it disturbs the air to make your car run faster. I think here, because of the speed you're running, another car out there is probably more of a distraction. You talk about how important it is to hit your marks, turning in the corner, middle of the corner, off the corner. I just think another car would be more of a distraction than anything.
And you're talking about what we've seen so far today, guys jumping sideways in front of you, kind of like scares you.
It definitely will get your breath, but I think Bob is with a guy that might be on the pole a little bit later on this afternoon if we don't watch it closely.
Well, Mark Martin loves coming here to Atlanta Motor Speedway, and looks like you have a great car both in race trim and qualifying trim. How good was it?
It's good. We're just, we're real pleased with the car, both race trim and Q trim. I wish we were racing tonight. It's nice to be back at the racetrack. It's fun to be back working with these guys. I really love driving their car and working with them, and it's going well.
Mark, is there any, thoughts about how you're racing at night, you're practicing during the day, so a lot of scratching the heads going on?
Yeah, I would say, yeah. Not exactly sure. The guys that did the tire test did run some at night. But, we're expecting just more grip. Not really a huge balance change, Lowe's, Charlotte used to be a big, big swing. It's not as big anymore, but it used to be incredible. But don't really expect this racetrack to be that big of a swing, just better grip.
Mark Martin, second quick in this practice session, guys.
I don't think that'll hurt anybody's feelings.
No.
In either end of the race car.
Closing minutes of practice coming up here on Speed. Stay with us on this Labor Day weekend. We're back at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Glad you're with us. Final of 2 practice sessions just about to wind down. Let's go to Wendy.
And everyone slowing down out there due to the weather. But Carl Edwards, your crew chief Bob Osborne, said good job for stepping it up today. How do you feel?
Yeah, he had to put the step in there. I feel good. Got a great team of doctors back there at the University of Missouri that really helped me out. Pretty wild. I mean, I didn't know what to expect coming here, but my foot's good. The Cup car is really fast, and I'm really glad for that. We got the special paint scheme from Jody Lawrence at the Aflac Cancer Center, and it mean a lot to run really well here this weekend.
What's been the biggest challenge you've experienced today with your right foot?
I have to pick and choose my throttle position very carefully because it hurts quite a bit to slap my foot around in there and drive like I normally do. So in the end, it might make me a better driver. I'm being a lot more precise, and it's really pretty good with the Cup car with all the power. The Nationwide car is a little tougher because you spend so much time wide open, and that's what hurts the most.
All right, thanks to Carl Edwards. We'll be watching him in Nationwide qualifying. He goes out 10th, and he's getting ready to address the media. Everybody's waiting here to see how Carl did with his foot today.
Well, the red and the black flag just waved, so that means practice is over. There's the fastest man in practice, but because of when he did it, I don't know if we can absolutely say he's the fastest as far as qualifying trim. I like that 5 car, Mark.
I think it's going to be real close to call, and then when it comes down to the draw as far as qualifying, Mark goes out 17th, 39 of Ryan Newman goes out 19th. Not a big difference there.
See Brian Vickers in that Toyota, sandwiched between those 4 Chevrolets, 2 on each side of him.
David Stremme with the only Dodge inside the top 10.
And then Scott Speed is the fastest of the go or go home cars.
Well, guys, we've heard cars described as crazy, evil, wicked. This track's warming up.
I think they are all of the above.
Fireworks are getting ready to start early as far as Labor Day weekend's concerned.
You know what's going to make a big difference on this qualifying, especially for our top 35? It's going to be one and done. Your money lap's going to be the first lap. How you get off pit road and get down the back straightaway through 3 and 4, come to take the green.
Got to nail that speed lap. You're right about that, Larry. It's going to be wild. Don't want to miss any of it, I guarantee. And it's still going to be on speed. What time, Steve?
4:30 Eastern.
4:30 Eastern. All right.
Right now, we're going to turn the duties over to John Roberts at the speed stage. We'll come back in just a little bit and have nationwide qualifying coming up.